In 1986, a dive instructor near a tiny Japanese island went looking for a good spot to watch hammerhead sharks. What he found instead was a stone structure the size of a football field, sitting 80 feet underwater, with straight edges, sharp right angles, and steps that looked like they belonged to a temple. Some scientists took one look and said it was obviously built by humans. Other scientists took one look at the exact same rock and said nature did this on its own. Almost 40 years later, marine geologists still can't agree, and that disagreement is the whole point of this video. Yonaguni is Japan's westernmost island, closer to Taiwan than to Tokyo. The water around it is famous for strong currents and hammerhead shark migrations, which is exactly why a diver named Kihachiro Aratake was down there in the first place. Instead of sharks, he swam straight into what looked like a staircase carved into the seabed. Flat terraces stacked on top of each other, a wall running along one edge, and a corner cut at a near-perfect 90 degrees. Word got out fast. Divers started calling it Japan's Atlantis, and one professor at the University of the Ryukyus decided to make it his life's work. Kimura spent over 20 years diving the site, and he became convinced it was built by human hands roughly 10,000 years ago, before the last ice age ended and sea levels rose to swallow it. That number alone should stop you. The pyramids of Egypt are about 4,500 years old. Stonehenge is around 5,000. If Kimura is right, this structure would predate both by thousands of years, back when most of human history assumes we were still hunting mammoths, not cutting quarry stone into stairs. Kimura pointed to features that are hard to explain as accidents. Straight trenches carved into the rock at consistent depths. A round hole drilled clean through solid stone, stepped terraces that align almost too well to be random erosion. He also claimed to find what looked like a face carved into a nearby rock, and markings resembling characters. Critics call that a stretch. Kimura never backed down from it. If he's right, this site rewrites the timeline of civilization in East Asia entirely. Here's the problem. Yonaguni sits on a type of sandstone that naturally fractures into straight lines and sharp angles. Geologists have a name for it. It splits along bedding planes and joints, the same way a chocolate bar snaps clean along its ridges. Robert Schoch, a Boston University geologist who dove the site personally, came back with a blunt conclusion. He said the steps match natural rock formations you can find on the dry parts of the same island, sitting above water, untouched by any hands. That single detail is the strongest argument against Kimura. If the exact same terraced pattern shows up naturally on land nearby, it gets a lot harder to argue the underwater version needed a chisel. Schoch also pushed back on the age claim. He argued the structure could be a few thousand years old at most, well within a time frame that doesn't force us to rewrite anything about ancient history. Two geologists, two dives to the same site, two completely different conclusions. Here's what nobody tells you about this debate. It's still unresolved, right now, in 2026. There's been no conclusive dating test, because you can't carbon date solid rock the way you can date bone or wood. That's rare. Most ancient mysteries eventually get settled by better technology. This one just keeps sitting there, splitting experts down the middle, because the evidence genuinely points both ways depending on which rock you're standing on. Japan's government has never funded a full excavation or protected the site as a national monument, which means most of what we know still comes from independent dives, not a coordinated dig. So the honest answer to what is the Yonaguni Monument is that nobody actually knows, and anyone who tells you otherwise is guessing with confidence. You now know both sides of one of the strangest standoffs in modern archaeology, and why a piece of rock off a Japanese island still has geologists arguing decades later. If unsolved places like this get you, the video on screen right now covers another site archaeologists still can't agree on, and it might change how you see this one.